So, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum and very good morning. Do we start or? Okay. Anybody can hear me? Everybody can hear me? Or Azlan, can you hear me, Azlan?
Yep, can.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for the organizer for having this webinar series organized by IEEE, also supported by MTSFB. So my name is Thaib bin Mustafa, and I'm the chairman for Working Group Security, Trust and Privacy for the Malaysian Technical Standard Forum Berhad. I think with me, with Encik Azlan, Mohamed Ghazali. Just to introduce myself further, I'm also looking at the company Feasible Network Systems Malaysia. We are more focused on the blockchain security and authentication services, and also involved with the industry in the IQT Study Group 17 on security as the editor, as well as the core repertoire for the question 3 on information security management system. I think today we talk about cloud security, which is one of the critical infrastructure and services that we are live in today in this digital world. I'd like to maybe start with Azlan to introduce himself and also to start the discussion. But before that, I just want to highlight that it's so much critical today when we look at cloud computing services for 5G and coming 6G, which is the IMT 2030. When we look at the metaverse requirement, Web 3.0 requirement, quantum computing. So these are the things that coming in terms of the use of the critical infrastructure of cloud, whether it's a private, public, multi-cloud, hybrid clouds, and all the services that within the cloud. Just to highlight, about 76% or 80% of the enterprise globally are now using 2 or more cloud services providers. But 35% of organizations have more than 50% of their workload, the computing using or use cloud services. So it's about 30% going to anticipate to move to cloud services. And we will see, I think, with the criticality of the cloud services in terms of resiliency, in terms of high availability services, that we will see more than 75% of the workload or the workload to be in the cloud in the future. But again, when we look at the cloud security, there will be some concerns on the threats, on the risk, compliance, regulatory requirements, on the personal data protections. So these are concerns and barriers moving toward cloud and subscribing to any service cloud service provider. And the concern in terms of the key security controls for us to consider to subscribe to the cloud services. I think that is something just want to hit up the discussion today. Without further ado, please, Azlan, introduce yourself and we can start this discussion. And please also put in your questions for us to have a good discussion for this session. Thank you very much. Azlan, take it up.
All right. Assalamualaikum and very good morning, everyone. Alhamdulillah, I think we given a time for you to just to share that some of our not part of knowledge sharing on the cloud security, right? Before that, let me share some of my background. Basically, I've been in cyber industry for the last 20 years. I've experienced working in various industry domains. I used to work in banks, telco industry, oil and gas, before I moved to Big Four. Prior to Deloitte, basically I'm with another Big Four. And then some of my experience basically handling various projects on cybersecurity, which is I can say namely a few, for instance, that we are focusing on a red teaming exercise, compromise assessment, cyber maturity assessments, and then in the recent, I think starting from RMIT, right, has been released from banks, so we work quite closely with the banks to conduct various cloud risk assessment. So that's give us some opportunity to understand further what are the things to be assessed prior to you adopt or embark to the cloud, and then some of the considerations to take into account while considering your data to be parked at the cloud, right? So that's my background. At the moment, I'm attached with Deloitte, so we are focusing on cybersecurity as well. Quite similar with other Big Four, but I think here today I will share some of the Deloitte approach on how we tackle the cloud security, mainly coming from the cloud risk assessment, right? How we tackle what are the things that need to be assessed prior to cloud adoption as a cloud embarking, right? So there will be some responsibility from CSS, which is cloud service subscriber or clients or end users, right? As well as you need to understand what are the things that need to be put in place by CSP or cloud provider, right? Let me share my slide. I hope you can see it. Cik Thaib, nampak tak?
Yes, just bring it to the full view, then should be
Now,
okay.
now it's full view.
Oh, okay. All right.
Nampak tak?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right. This is our, as I mentioned earlier, right? There are, if you are comparing, right, if you are familiar with various clouds framework, for instance, that there is ANISA, there is a FredCam, there is, if you are coming from industry, if you're well versed with telco, you can refer to MTSB, cloud service provider selections. There is also a guidelines from CSM, how you can means detailed guidelines how to choose cloud provider based on your model, based on your PaaS, IaaS, and SaaS. So there are detailed requirements there. So you can refer to various. In fact, in the recent, I think, update from Bank Negara, they also released, they call it a cloud technology risk assessment guideline. So you can, right now, basically on earlier part of the RMIT, basically just a portion, a domain about cloud security, but recently they released, I think, what they call, it's a draft working paper on cloud. So it's talking more details about how the organization should consider all the security control prior to move to cloud. When I compare various framework, basically more or less they are similar. Either you are from NIST, ISO 27001, 217, all those things, Bank Negara, MTSFB, basically it's like similar things. Then from Deloitte, basically we are sort of combining all those best practices. So that's become our own cloud risk methodology lah. So here on your screen, on my screen, basically you can see that these are the specific domains that we need to assess, right? The moment you are,
Azlan, I think we still see the same page, the first one.
is it? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Right now?
no. I think you can go. Yeah. Now it's on the second, but it's not. It's not on a full view.
Full, on my screen
I'm
dah
not
full
sure.
view. Macam mana nak buat?
Maybe you can go to view. It should be full view.
Yeah, now I'm project the slide.
Okay. But here the screen is still. I
Oh,
can see
okay.
your default section, untitled section.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a bit small.
Yeah. Sama ah?
Sama.
on my screen dah full tu. Sekejap. Macam mana buat lah. Let me stop sharing first. Try to find out the other way.
Yeah. Okay, I think while waiting for that, please put in your questions, if anything, you don't mind, that we can discuss it over this session. As we know, today's cloud is very critical infrastructure services that we are adopting for our critical digital environment. Okay, let me see. It's still same. Still the same. Yeah.
Macam mana nak buat lah? Because on my screen dah
full,
dah full. Unless saya besar ke sini.
It's we still can see the auto save.
Macam mana nak project from
maybe you
here?
can try project again. Project to the presentation.
Now presentation mode.
It doesn't show to the presentation. Okay. You can maybe one way you can save it at PDF and then view from PDF. That's should be better. Yeah. You can exit first and then try to save it in PDF, and then we can view full from the PDF version, and that should be okay. For the benefits of our audience, I think the slides will be the basis for our discussion today on this cloud security.
Okay, let me try again.
Okay.
Slide yang computer, upload file.
Okay. I think while waiting for Mr. Azlan, I just also want to highlight the what happened to the cloud service providers in Europe due to the power shortages in Europe. That's one of the biggest threats, concerns, when the power, the electrical requirements that actually power up all the servers or the cloud infrastructure in Europe was impacted, in the sense that whether there will be a shortage of supply of electrics or high cost of computing that was powered by the electricity. So this is one of the biggest concern globally today, in terms of first having dependency on the cloud services, but at the same time, there are a lot of other risks also associated with regards to the cloud services providers, the cloud infrastructure. In terms of the computing power, especially from the electricity, to be more resilient in the sense that whenever the cloud services call up digitally through the internet, that's what we expect, that the services will be there for us. Perfect. Yes, perfect. So let's continue our discussion. Go ahead, please.
All right. Sorry, guys. Cool. So yeah. So this is, as I mentioned, right? We sort of combine various best practices, then become a Deloitte proprietary. As I mentioned earlier, we also try to compare with the rest. If you just now I mentioned that we have read that there is a new cloud security from Benegara, then there are security requirements on cloud from NISA, NIST, as well as MTSFB cloud service solution. And then if you have a time, that maybe you can download from CSM. They also have very detailed guidelines. But more or less, basically, the control is starting from the first, which is point on governance. right? Said governance, risk management, and compliance. So basically here, if you see that more on technology risk, you need to understand, is your management is aware that prior to your decision to move to the cloud, what is the key things that you need to consider, right? Basically from cloud usage policy, do you have a policy or not to tackle and cover the cloud solutions? So based on our assessment, basically we found out that organization is really, they are really focused to move to the cloud, but without considering is there any specific cloud security policy in place. So that's one of the common issues. Like basically, they have IT security policy, but they didn't consider what are the things to be put into a cloud specific policy. So you need to have that as well, part of the governance, right? Risk management, you need to conduct a detailed risk assessments. Then this risk assessment basically to understand what is your inherent risk, right? What is inherent risk? Basically, it's a risk that currently exists in your environment before you do any mitigations, right? You need to understand what is your inherent risk by putting your application on cloud. Then you need to understand, by knowing your inherent risk, you need to put some mitigations. Let's say like you know that you're putting your customer data on a SaaS or PaaS or IaaS, right? Basically, what is the risk? Maybe data leakage is one of the risks. Maybe somewhat is multi-tenant is one of the risks. Exit strategy is not there. So you need to understand that what is the mitigations. For instance, that okay, you have a CASB, you have a detailed access control, you are review access control, you are doing regular scanning, pen test, whatever. So that become the residual risk. So you understand your inherent risk, you understand what is your residual risk, then you can give a management decision. Yes, we have do a due diligence. This is what we understand. This is the risk. So that is part of the first item, which is under governance, risk, and compliance. You need to do that before you decide. Yes, we need to move to cloud A, B, C, or D. Right? You need to have a delivery strategy and architecture. You need to understand what is architecture, right? Is it multi-tenant? Is it virtual? So based on your modeling, right? And then delivery, based on your delivery strategy, right? You need to understand that in terms of the your container, right? Change management, your backup and strategy, your portability and exit strategy, right? So you need to understand on the second item, strategy and architecture. Delivery, strategy, and architecture. The third one, basically infra security. You understand that do your CSP conduct any regular pen test or productivity management? What are the risks that they are facing? Do you able to see their audit findings or the reports? So that's focus on infra security. You need to do that as well. Access management based on the modeling, right? If you are choose SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS, basically different model have different shared responsibility, which is I will cover later. Data management, you need to see that whether your data has been encrypted or not. When you are exit from the CSP, right? What are the strategy? Whether your data will be removed permanently, whether your data will be they are following any data cleansing process or not, right? So that's covered under data management. Business resiliency, basically we assess whether the CSP have a proper capability in terms of DR capability, BSC capability. Are they do any testing on DR? Are they comply with any industry standard or not for the DR capability, right? You understand whether they are restored, whether their primary is sitting in Malaysia or primary is sitting in overseas or not, then you need to understand from business, right? IT operations, from asset management, project management, incident management, that we covered the whole thing. You need to assess whether internally, whether your team is capable on the cloud operations, or if you are using a CSP, you need to assess the capability from the IT operation at the cloud, right? On the vendor management, basically more on vendor selections, monitoring, how you do a vendor lock-in, right? Let's say like you attach with Google, and then you want to move to AWS. What are the exit strategy? What happened to your data when it's in there? Is they compatible with others, or do you need to have to revamp the whole thing before you move to the other provider? So you need to understand from the vendor selections as well. The last one will be the legal. I think legal, we're talking about the exit strategy, the security requirements, the SLAs, all these will be covered under business operations. That briefly on the domains that you should cover part of the DUD, right? Next slide, I covered. Okay, this is just our framework basically. As I mentioned earlier, basically we are trying to cover from the risk domain, control activity, description. Basically, you can have sort of checklist to conduct to evaluate each of the domains, and then from there you will assess from what is your risk, what is the likelihood, what is the impact for each of the control, then what are the mitigations, right? So from there you will assess each of the domains. There are clearly the potential risk as well as the control that you need to put in place. We also compare with the rest. For instance, right, you have CSA. I think everyone should aware that this is the main primary reference. If you are plan to embark on the cloud, right, you need to understand what is CSA. They have a CSA checklist. They have a CSA star audit, all those things. So you need to understand. You can download freely. Then we also have a FedRAMP. We also have NIST as well as ISO. So this is the common framework that we are comparing, right? So but mainly, you see, right, in the title, basically talking about business operations, business resiliency, data management, and so on and so forth, up to the vendor management. More or less, they are talking about the same domains. So this is the beauty that we are compiling into a single approach. Okay, this is another important point that I would like to emphasize here. By choosing any CSP, right, business model, public, hybrid, or private, basically you need to understand that if you choose certain model, for instance, SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS, basically there are certain responsibility need to be aware, right? Either you are as a CSS, cloud service user, or you are CSP, right? So in this diagram, it gives you on a high level, okay, from if you are choose a SaaS, right, basically services and application basically is owned by the CSP, right, or owned by the CSS. I think better in a clear picture, better you refer to this on the right diagram. You see here, SaaS, if you are focusing data governance, client's endpoint, account access, basically is owned by, for instance, banks, any clients, right? Basically more on CSS, cloud service subscriber, right? And then on the left side, basically, if you choose PaaS, IaaS, basically, there are certain responsibility, basically is responsible by the CSP or cloud service provider. And then if you're fully on-prem, basically is owned by the subscriber. So this on your left side, basically this explain what are the responsibility on the applications, on the OS that you need to aware, right? So in a nutshell, basically that the moment you are subscribed to cloud, basically not everything is accountable by the CSP. You need to assess exactly what is your role, what is the CSP's role. So the whole accountability and responsibility, basically you need to document, put in it clearly in your contract and agreements. Otherwise, it will be an issue that, okay, in case of that, maybe for instance, if incident happen, right? So CSP doesn't take any responsibility because that not be clearly stated in your agreements. As well as you need to put clearly when it comes to the SLA, the control area that you need to focus, when it comes to the exit strategy, what are the clauses that you need to focus. That covered end to end when you fully understand about the cloud risk responsibility. Okay, this is some of the common players, basically, right? HANA, SAP HANA, this is everywhere, basically. So if you are moved to SaaS, basically, SaaS is purely application that you are subscribed, purely that you are leveraged on the application. For instance, Office 365 is considered SaaS because the whole maintenance, whatever security is covered by the CSP, right? So you also have Salesforce, you have ServiceNow, Office 365, Oracle, so and so forth here. Platform as a service, basically more on that you are the platform is owned by CSP, but you can configure certain things. You can configure your processor, you can configure your maybe certain language programming. You can include that in your as you use your platform because the whole platform is owned by the provider, right? the last one become the IS infra. So you use their infra to park all your applications. You have a control on OS, you have control on your network. So that's another beauty of the basically IS lah. So in high level, basically there are SaaS, there are PaaS, there are IS. Whatever model that you choose, basically you need to consider, you need to conduct a very thorough due diligence. If you refer to MTSFB, right? MTSFB guideline, basically the first few pages that on our technical code, basically we highlighted on what is the role of CSS and CSP. So back to the previous slide, right? Basically about talking about similar things here. You need to understand your role. If you're not clear, you need to clarify with your CSP. The moment you choose SaaS, what is the area that being covered, supported by your CSP. The moment you use PaaS and SaaS, similar things. You need to understand that, right? And then in our technical code also, we emphasize on to conduct a risk assessment. Quite similar thing from what I explained earlier. It's a due diligence that you need to conduct. You need to understand what is the risk, what's the impact, what is the likelihood. You need to evaluate the risk, right, from each of the control. From there must be a risk treatment, whether you accept the risk, whether you transfer, or whether you avoid the risk. So that kind of risk methodology you can tie back to your enterprise risk management process or framework. So that's how you mitigate the risk or conduct the risk, right? And then we also emphasize on selection criteria. For instance, that there must be the CSP has to align with industry best practices. For instance, ISO 27001, ISO 22301 for the BCM. They also need to comply with the SOC 1, SOC 2. Maybe to a certain extent, they have complied with the CSA star. They have performed various audit. They allow you to share their report. So that kind of certification or industry recognition, you need to assess how capable they are. When it comes to your internal team, you need to also to assess internal capability. Whether your team is ready to manage a cloud, whether they have a certain technical training on the cloud, right? So you need to assess them as well. We're also talking about data governance, right? Data security, how they, as the moment the data you park in the cloud, what is the security control they put in place? When it comes to about data at rest, right? So it's the encryptions, and they're following which type of the encryption process, 256, triple S, whatever control that. Then you need to assess how good is their data security control. Then the other control that you need to consider is more on SLA, right? This is very crucial because SLA talking about the moment the uptime, the availability, when it comes to the cyber incidents, how they respond, how they react on that, you need to define clearly on the SLA. The final topic on our technical code, basically more on exit strategy, right? Because we have a cases that, yeah, you paid so much when you are on board, but the moment you are plan to exit, there are additional costs that not been spelled out clearly in the agreements. So you need to understand, you need to assess prior to you choose that what is the exit strategy. The moment you are plan to move from A provider to B provider, basically, your data is compatible? Are you being charged because to remove all your data from the platform, from their storage, right? So this kind of thing that you need to consider that. For more detail, basically, I think it would be good if you can download MTSFB technical code. There are in MTSFB website. You also can search from CSM. They have a very detailed as well. And then if you are from in other approach, maybe you can search for NIST as well as the NISA as well. It's quite good. Explain. NISA give a good explanation on how you can handle residual risk, what is the impact and likelihood for each of the domains that we are explained earlier. So this is some example basically I put here. Example, if you choose SaaS, basically sum of responsibility under the customers and then under the provider. So roughly that's the things that I want to share today. Maybe I stop here to open for any questions, maybe from Thaib or from anyone that would like to clarify. I'm not the expert, but I try to share based on our experience conducting few cloud assessments, as well as involved in few engagement with various clients.
Yeah, I think thank you very much, Encik Azlan, for highlighting. I think the slide is pretty much highlighted, the responsibilities when we subscribe to the cloud service provider. It doesn't really mean that everything goes to the cloud service provider, especially on the security part. It has to be still within the organization. Still,
Yep.
because when we talk about cloud, it's just a piece of the whole digital infrastructure that we are part of it, and we are also be accountable for the whole this infrastructure of cloud, even though it's being outsourced to a third party or the cloud service provider. So the main responsibility, accountability still belong to the organization in terms of managing the risk, ensuring the right controls, the proper controls, whoever that can access to the cloud. I think as highlighted, the managing the risk and compliance, doing the assessments, managing the users, the endpoints, the devices that connected to the services to the cloud still belong to the organization. So I think one of the key issues that I like to highlight, maybe that we can discuss with Encik Azlan, is that the concern on the data privacy. I think every single country have their own data protection act. Recently, Indonesia also have just have their own personal data protection act recently. And Singapore, Malaysia, and the rest of the world, EU, GDPR, and there are so many concerns on this data residency, for example, and maybe Azlan can give us some advice, how we actually want to have controls of this data, and at the same time complying the regulatory compliance of the countries, the resident country, for example, Malaysia, and also other countries, because Malaysia also, we still have to comply, for example, like GDPR, because we do business with EU and all this. So
Yeah.
maybe Azlan can share, his thought on this particular concern. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Azlan, please.
Yep. Maybe let me share a bit that on data privacy, right? Yeah, data privacy become previously. I think we just focus on data protection, right? In the main topic here is more on data governance. From data governance, they have a second layer focus on uh, data security. There is one part of data governance basically means if you are familiar with data governance, one of the components basically to focus on data security and privacy. Right? Previously, I think in last 4-5 years, basically we just focus on data security. From that, we are embarked to certain DLP tools, right, to secure the moment stuff that moving or having a data. Then we try to limit the movement of data by putting certain control, basically, right? So at current state, basically the topic is more on how we make sure that the privacy of the data, right? So of course, Malaysia, we have a PDPA, we have a PDPC. So you need, to me, based on my experience, basically, first thing you need to identify, you need to have a proper data privacy policy. So from governance perspective, you need to have a very established data privacy policy. Right now, people also talking about ESG on data privacy. So another components and the new things that we are currently also learn a new thing, basically, not just focus on ESG environmental, but also how we can make sure that ESG on data privacy and security. So the data privacy policy is one thing. Number two, basically, you need to have a proper data classifications, right? Whatever the data you put in cloud, for instance, right? You need to, that's why for the banks, basically, they are quite clear because Benigara requirement is clearly stated that if you are moved to your critical application to cloud, you need to conduct a cloud risk assessment. So that's give a banks avenue to assess if I move my critical applications. Normally, critical application come with critical data, and then critical data always have maybe customer data, banks, user, all those things. So the moment you conduct RA, then from there it give you, okay, if I move to provider or CSP, that my data is be secured. So you need to understand what are the controls that they put in place. Not just a DLP is one thing, data classification is another area. If you have that data classification, and number thirdly, basically on how you handle the data, right? If you are communicate through email, then it must be a certain control. If you are print, if you are sent to a third party, what are the control? So that cover more or less on data privacy and then control. The other control that basically we need to understand what's the impact in case that the data has been leaked or whatever, right? Whether internally from our Malaysia government is PDPA, and then if you have a business with any Europe or overseas, that you need to align with GDPR, which is more stringent, which is have a very huge penalties, but Malaysia basically not yet lah. So far, I don't hear any cases that a company being penalized due to the data leakage, right? So, but to me, data privacy is a concern right now, because we are not sure how the organization or CSP put a contract into a place, right? Basically, so to me is tie back to risk assessment law. So risk assessment is identify the place, whether data at rest, whether data on network, basically how they put certain elements of data protections, and as well as data privacy on that. Yep, that's my message.
Okay, thank you, Encik Azlan, for that insights of discussion. I think another concern of us is especially when put in all the controls, I mean, internally. Now, you're talking about the malicious insiders. As we know that this is very, very difficult for us, but still it's a major threats in terms of protecting our data. Even with our own control of our private servers infrastructure, it's a very, very difficult to manage this. Sometimes it's unintentional, sometimes it's malicious intention, because these are all the authorized users that can access to our network and our sensitive data. But even it make it more difficult in the cloud environment, with the cloud deployments, with the visibility that we have on the infrastructure and everything else. So maybe what is your advice, Encik Azlan, in managing this sort of concern and also threats of the malicious insiders, whether it's with intention or sometimes it's just by accident. Maybe you can share with us your experience, Encik Azlan.
Okay, insider threat basically, because let's say like we are one of the threat actor, right? We always define that insider threat is one of the commonly happen. If you are even from a study, also we identify that the higher risk is coming from inside, because you are allow them to access, means they are authorized to do a work, right, with a certain.
Yes.
So there are always incidents that people just overlook because they don't care, they don't review any access, or access has been given beyond their capacity, or to make it straightforward, basically, let's say like I'm a new guy, right? I'm new staff. Then when I request an access, basically my boss just say, okay, just follow me, just follow my access. So that's sent to a ID team. They create ID, basically they just copy and duplicate, easier. That's give staff a lot of avenue to, but if this guy is just a data entry, but you give them basically it's a function to submit as well to approve, then that's become a critical risk, which is we are not really aware, because we don't really conduct insider threat assessment. We only focus on third party, external party. Even third party also, to me, is considered insider threat, because they are your partners. Some of them, they are stationed at your office. you treat them as a staff, but actually they are third party. But we always forgot these two. We give additional access, additional privilege to our staff. We also allow or give access to our third party that station in our office, or they are connected to our environment because you trust them, right? So these two, in our experience, basically these two are the considered a potential threat. We have a cases, I think, a couple of years back, basically the attack coming from your alliances, because they are your partners. You give certain access for them to come to your environments. At the end, if I hack that, then basically indirectly I can come to your organizations, right? So threat insider, threat insider threat assessment is always to be conducted in regular basis to understand the whole threat landscape. Don't just focus on external party. For instance, that if you are perform external VAPT, internal VAPT, but or in case that you are plan to perform any red team exercise, try to consider that insider threat is one of the simulation or business cases. From there, you understand, okay, if I'm the normal user, how can I manipulate my access to gain a super access, which is always become blind spot to organizations.
Okay, I think something that is for us to consider in doing our security assessment internally, externally. That's the reason why we also need to have a second or third party assessment, because sometimes internally we do have a limited time, resources, experts. That's why it's good to have a third party assessment also, to make sure that we do not have lost sights in terms of some of the security issues are concerned, especially related to the cloud services. Because we also want to make sure that the cloud service provider also do not have issues in terms of the internal or malicious insiders attacks. That can be a very, very significant impact to our business reputation and also the operation. I just want to highlight also, Encik Azlan, I think based on your experience, I think you are very familiar with the incident response, because the incident response now, about 45-50% of the companies are very concerned in terms of your ability to perform incident response effectively in the cloud, because we used to have full control and visibility of the infrastructure. Now we have it on the cloud, and maybe the visibility is quite limited on the whole infrastructure operation. So basically, how as an organization in managing the incident and performing the incident response, taking the right remediation action, what's the difference now we already have outsourced the whole services, everything to the cloud service provider. Is that any difference? And what are the effective way of managing incident response? Maybe Encik Azlan can highlight that one to us for the benefit.
Maybe just a quick one. Okay, I believe that each organizations, if they are maybe from a big company, right, they have their dedicated incident response team, or we call it blue team, right, which is they are mainly to blue team maybe consists of various team from server team, network, firewall, IT security, and then this is the team that consider CIRT, right? CIST means CRT, basically community response team. So when it comes to the cloud, basically, since you are part or you are subscribed to CSP, basically, whatever incidents happen at the cloud, let's say like the data leakage. So of course we need to assess first before you choose, right? We need to assess how capable is the cloud incident response team at the CSP. Are they exposed any specific technical trainings? Are they conduct any regular testings? Cyber drill maybe become one of the key requirements in your contract. You need to do that. When it comes to the if they have a full visibility, if they have a SOC, they monitor all those things. So to me, it's more on capability of incident response team at the cloud provider, but if you choose PAS and SAS, basically you need to establish your own incident response team. So based on our experience, basically when we conduct a red team, right, we try to attack, for instance, cloud applications. We try to simulate an attacks to internal on-prem applications. So we try both basically. So sometimes when we attack, we try to simulate access to cloud. Basically, we get a quick response from the CSP, meaning that they have a very good capability to detect and respond. So I believe, of course, if you choose Amazon, AWS, Google, I believe their cyber team is very well versed. How they respond, what kind of the log they are review. They have a complete playbooks, SOA, whatever technology basically to detect and respond easily and automate, right? But the issue here basically on client side, because they don't really have a dedicated incident response team. Our experience with the while doing a red team, basically, we always manage to capture whatever we managed to exploit a data for 3 days without any notice from the clients. We managed to come to organizations and then plug in certain Malaysia software without any detections. So my question is basically how ready, how not ready, basically company need to assess whether they have the right incident team or not. The first thing, right? Because if you are a big company, maybe you have dedicated. Otherwise, you don't define anyone to become your incident response. And so when there is a breach or incident, you don't know how to contact. You don't know who to contact. You don't have any playbooks, right? You just do based on the ad hoc, which is a bit worried basically. So in a matured environment, basically they have a dedicated incident response team. They have regular testing, cyber drill based on various scenario from time to time. They have a dedicated playbook, basically. Okay, and when come to the ransomware, this is the step to be performed. When come to the DDoS attack, these are the steps. So they have a established playbook. Then they also organization that leverage on automations. They have a SOA that been customized with a certain playbook. So when come to the any incidents, this tool will be able to detect automatically without with a minimal intervention from the IR team. So the blue team has to be ready all the time. The blue team need to be tested from time to time by, maybe you need to engage third party, or you need to, if you have an internal team that capable to do a red team, so try to simulate attack from internal, from external, from various angle, and then see how your blue team able to detect. So you need to assess the mean time to detect, mean time to response. From there, you can improve. Okay, if I use these business cases, if I attack from this and from external, then maybe they need 3 days. In a common, right? In my our experience with banks, basically, there are banks take about 3 days to detect our movement. There are banks take about 1 day. So there are various capabilities. From there we see, right, the capability from respective organizations. But depend on their sizing, depend on their maturity, all those things. So we give a feedback. Okay, this is how we go in, how we transfer your data, how we change the privilege, how we conduct the social engineering, basically for the team to understand. Because sometimes we be challenged. I don't think that your counterizations, this is not our data. Then we always have a sort of, it's not argument, but more on knowledge sharing, how we go in, how we can come up with organizations without any detect that from your team. So from there, more on lesson learned, we give them a right tools, a right way to analyze, a right way to focus when it comes to the cyber breach.
Okay, Encik Azlan, I think we have also tried to have more questions coming from the channel, YouTube, FB, or the StreamYard. But I think as we have about less than 10 minutes now for the discussion of this webinar, and I think for the benefits of the participants here, the listeners, is that when we go for a cloud service provider, what do actually we look at? Some, for example, is the compliance to certain standard, PCI DSS, HIPAA, GDPR, SOC 2, for example. Maybe your recommendation. What are the key things that the customers, the subscriber need to look at the cloud service provider? What are the critical components, the high, critical in terms of selecting a cloud service provider? Maybe just summarize it in a
Yeah.
few minutes on that one. Okay.
If I'm the clients, right, basically, if I'm the cloud service subscriber, number one that I need to conduct is cloud risk assessment or due diligence, right? Due diligence on my data, why I need to put this data, and then what the control that having put in place by CSP. So CSP have to demonstrate end-to-end security controls, not just from physical, but from the logical, from the capability of their staff, their capability of the detection and response, capability in terms of governance, alignment with industries practice, for instance, that yes, they demonstrate that their cloud provider basically they are aligned with ISO or certified with ISO 2001, 22301 for the BCM, 20017, 20018. They have go through with a Cloud Service Alliance Star. At the same time, they are SOC 2 certified. So this give you sort of assurance, basically, that whatever control they put in place, whatever practice, they are being audited by third parties. So not just a shock sendiri lah. Versus, okay, I have put this control ABC, but basically who verified you, whether your control is good or not? Because some companies say, yeah, we are following industry best practice, but they don't go for certification. I highly recommend that CSP at least have to go this kind of certifications, because there will be a third party come always audit them on yearly basis, right? If you go for ISO, there will be an audit. If you go for CSA, there will be an audit. So that give another view from or another assurance to subscriber that our internal practice or the CSP practice is totally aligned with the industry or recognition, certification, as well as best practices. So that's another component. The other thing that I would like to share basically more on my worried part basically always on the agreement and contract and agreements. So we always overlook because we leave it to legal team to prepare the whole thing. Then you need to remember that legal team doesn't have a clue what kind of services you are subscribed, what kind of data that you are subscribed, you are stored in the CSP. So it will be very good if you can spare your time with the legal, crafting the agreements, make sure that the CSP can comply with your internal policies, with your internal regulators, because if you are moved to cloud, right, basically Google basically their law is in the US. So from there you need to argument your case basically need to comply with the Malaysian law, not US law, because your data is there, right? Your data US data there. So that kind of discussion basically with the legal to streamline back to incident response, how the CSP should respond to you when they have incidents within certain SLA, within 1 hour, 30 minutes, when it comes to reporting, which is normally being overlooked because legal just follow their standard template. Yeah, the point, the agreement basically focus on exit strategy. We have an issue because you easily put your data there on the cloud with a certain cost, but the moment you want to exit, basically the CSP will charge you a lot. At the end, you have to pay more than very costly for you to exit from the CSP. So that's one of the maybe CSP strategy for them to retain or remain with you, right? But you have to clearly spell out in the agreement. To me, other than cloud risk assessment or to understand the whole domain or 10 domains that I in my earlier slide, basically, try to emphasize work with legal on to craft and detail out on the agreement and SLAs.
Yeah, I think that's a good advice. I think we are almost run out of time. So I think we just have a few minutes just to wrap up and close the session of this webinar series specifically on cloud security. So it has done any last of your minutes of your advice to, to the audience, to the subscribers, to the service providers, to the what you call all the involved in terms of the cloud services digital ecosystems.
Yep.
Maybe some of your final words on this one.
Okay. Yep. Cloud give you some flexibility, right? In the long run, basically, to a certain extent, maybe can save cost, but without having a proper due diligence, without having a comprehensive reassessment, you wouldn't know whether you will pay more or you pay less, right? And then the most important thing is to understand is your data. That your data means your will impact to your reputations, you will impact to your brand hosting. So make sure that you choose the right CSP by conducting a due diligence or comprehensive risk assessment. That will give you a thorough view whether you should move your data or not, or to some extent maybe on-prem may be more secure for you, maybe more better options. Of course, right now everyone move to cloud. Maybe not every single application, right? That's why risk assessment will assess if I move to my critical, what's the impact? If I move non-critical application, what's the impact? So do a due diligence, very detailed assessments, present to your management, understand what is residual risk, understand what is inherent risk, then then you can decide on that. Otherwise, stay on-prem, maybe another good option for you.
Yeah, I think I just want to wrap up again just now when Azlan shared with us, the critical requirements in terms of managing cloud services, especially having the cloud strategy and the cloud security plan to make sure that everything is in check. For example,
Hmm.
the identity access management, the data management, and to make sure that the vendor management, the governance risk compliance. So these are all very, very critical to make sure that we have the business resiliency and availability of the operation so that we depend so much on cloud as part of our digital infrastructure. But again, we cannot blame anyone else except for ourselves if we don't do enough due diligence,
Hmm.
investment of our own internal resources to make sure that we can have full control and full visibility of the infrastructure that we have, even though we outsource it to the cloud service provider. So again, I think with the limited time that we have, I would like to thank you, Encik Azlan, for having this discussion. We're talking about cloud security. I think we have enough, a lot of points just now being discussed. And definitely, please have this, what you call, participation to come and also work with us at MTSSB, at IEEE, to be involved with the industries and contribute. Let's collaborate. So here, I think there is a link for the attendance. Please fill up the attendance as well as for the quiz for day 3. I think we have some gift tokens for you for our appreciation for participating in this webinar series. I think with that, thank you very much, Encik Azlan. Thank you very much,
Yeah.
Encik Yusof, and from IEEE and also from MTSSB. Thank you, and we'll see again in the future. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Salam. Thank you, everyone. Bye.